you know, everybody develops their own technique, but the principle is that it needs to be saturated with glue. You never put dry pieces of paper mache on the form. You always want to make sure that they're fully saturated and that you're overlapping your previous strips like this. Okay. You don't have to be ultra, you know, like, you know, accurate. It's not rocket science. It's just, you know, overlapping, connecting to the former one. Never cut them with scissors. You want the ragged edge of the paper because that laminates better to the previous strip. Okay.
And
I notice. Huh?
The idea is not to do 2 layers, right? Just
no.
a little bit of overlapping.
Yes, a little bit of overlapping, and you like, you know, travel across the form and get what they consider one layer. I mean, obviously, on that one layer, there's some places where it's overlapped and it's not one layer technically, but you're doing coverage. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is a really labor-intensive thing. Yes.
Chris, I've heard some people using the trick of doing the print side of the bag out on one layer, the blank side of the bag, so they can keep track of how far because you're not always finishing a layer in one.
Yeah, so I'm going to print side down, okay, which brings me to the next step. You don't let each layer dry in between. There's a lot of confusion about that. Even people that have done paper mache, they go, oh, you got to let each layer dry. It's like, no. The ideal is that you do all the wet layers all at once and you dry it all at once. The more, like if you do one layer and you let it dry and you re-wet it, it gets, you know, kind of crinkles, you know, and then you let that dry and you re-wet it and it crinkles. It's not good for it to dry and, you know, wet, dry, wet, dry, wet, dry. So always, and every professional artist that works in mache will tell you this, wet on wet, like get as many layers on it as you can as soon as possible and then let it dry all together. It makes a better, stronger form. Okay, are there any other questions? And then as people come up to work on this, I'll give more instruction about, you know, some of the details. We can use paper mache to like sculpt some more details, like to refine the eyelids. These are kind of roughed out, but we can use paper mache to sculpt a really beautiful eyelid.
Can you give us a little example of that and the size of paper that you might be using during that kind of detail?
Yeah.
Just an example so the camera can get it?
Yeah. Okay. So, well, the nostrils are a big one right here. Okay. So, as far as getting just the right contour of the nostrils, you know, we thought, well, we have to sculpt them out a little bit more, so it's like really like a nostril. We could have done that with the plastic and then gone to using like really thin, pieces of paper mache to try to like capture it in the mache. It's very important to understand that, like, you know, if you, let me just demonstrate it on the eye here. If you go like this with the eye, don't do that because, well, a lot of people don't understand. Conceptually, they think, well, we're just covering this and then somehow it's going to come out. Whatever you see the paper shaping is what you're going to get. Like the outside of the paper is going to be your aesthetic. So when you go to do finer details, you need to use thinner strips of paper and really conform to the contour of the details. Okay, you know, with the eyelid, you know, you can lay things on like this, fold them over. You know, sometimes you have to get a couple pieces on there before it really kind of gets some grip, and you can shape it with your fingers. We notice in the, I'm going to do it print side down this time around. Thanks, Bill, for.
And when you need to build up, like if there's an area that you need to thicken, do you do that not at the first layer, not at the last one, but at one of the middle ones? Building up a particular area? Like
once we get the nose covered with, you know, some material here, we can take, like if I wanted to build the nostrils like out a little bit more to get that really particular contour that she has in her nostrils, I'll take some paper mache like this, get it ultra soggy, wring it like this, nice and soft, and try to work it into, actually I can get more. So more material, ultra soggy. One thing I want to say, yeah, let me just do this first and I'm going to make another point that's very important. So you can take mache and scrunch it into basically like pretend like you're working with clay, you know, and you can lay it on like this. It's easier if you get a first layer of paper on first so that it adheres. Like I said, the plastic doesn't adhere to the plastic as much as you'd like. So if you get one layer on first and then you take this coil of paper and build up, even with the lips, like if we just suddenly decided the lips needed to be like added more material to it, you could take like, you know, scrunched up wads of paper and stick it on there and, you know, squeeze the paper and like get the paper to shape it. So you can do a lot of like relief sculpture with paper itself. And yes, it does dry over time. It dries and it dries rock solid, you know, under there. But then after you do that, you know, after I did this, I would need to put some more layers of mache to give her a skin back over the piece. So the one thing that we don't want is, which is very common, is people doing this. You know. Don't put it with that much mache on there. That causes bubbling, and it doesn't laminate as well. You really want to like saturate the paper, but you don't want it gobbed with mache. Okay. Anything else? Am I missing anything?
Just what's the smallest piece of paper you might put on that thing for the most detailed spot? And what would you crunch up that too when you're trying to do a real curve?
You know, once you'll probably have a couple people, you know, that get into really like crafting the eye. And on the eye, like if I wanted to get this contour over the lid like this, you know, I can use little pieces like this. See? This. You know, again, I'm not necessarily like taking little pieces like that and dipping them in there. I'm taking a larger piece, you know, getting it nice and saturated, and then as I'm working on it, just use a torn like cross grain, but that's okay.
Do you wad it? I noticed you don't crush it for this kind of detail.
Crush it?
Soften it for that. You don't.
I'm not adding sculpture to it. I'm just showing like the lower lid. I don't think we need to sculpt up. This upper lid, we may need to do some like adjustment.
So you only kind of use the wadding to soften it when you're actually sculpting. You don't wad it in general. Just for the layers.
Sometimes. Yeah, it's a feeling. Like if it's not shaping and conforming to the shape, you know, squeeze a little bit, tear a smaller piece. It's a matter of like making sure that it sculpts, you know, is really honoring the shape that we did with the form. So. And I'll give some, you know, micro instruction as people come in and work on it. So I think that's enough for the big group instruction. Yes? One more thing?
Just one last thing. Just after they pull it off, since we're not going to be here, can you talk a little bit about the final edge and when it is a final edge, whether or not this is what you do at that edge, or what you do after you drill, put supportive stuff into it? Structure.
You think that's good for the whole group instruction?
Well, I think it's good for the video.
So, okay, well that's right, I'm being video. Yeah. So we're going to pull this whole mask up here, and when you pull the mask off, the most vulnerable and like important part to be stabilized is the collar of the mask. So the collar of the mask is really like flimsy and like floppy and, you know, not well mache. The whole mask is going to flop. So typically we pull it up, and then along that edge we trim it with scissors. We take a strip of cardboard, cement it to the inside, just a long strip of cardboard to reinforce the collar of the mask. Often to stabilize a mask, we put a dowel cross piece, like a bar that goes across, you know, from here to here in the mask, or back here, like that, and screw it in with, you know, just drywall screws, screw right into the ends of the dowel with washers, so it doesn't tear, the paper doesn't tear out of this, you know, the screw head. We can give you illustrations of that before we leave, or like after we leave, we can send you technical illustrations. But and that cross piece that goes across like this really aids when we have that pole. Attaching to the pole, we'll attach the top of the pole, the top of the head. We can strap, you know, rubber tie like I showed yesterday, lash that cross piece in the head, you know, right about here to this to stabilize the whole head on the form. Okay. Is that good?
That's good.
Yeah. So, like I said, I'll give more specific instruction about machining as we work on this. But this could easily accommodate 6 people, 7 people.